Good evening and welcome to the Selectboard Board of Health Sewer Commissioners meeting of March 26, 2025 at 5:30 p.m. This meeting will be held in a hybrid fashion with the opportunity for both in-person attendance and remote participation. Please note that while an option for remote attendance and/or participation is being provided as a courtesy to the public, the meeting hearing will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the virtual broadcast unless otherwise required by law. Members of the public with a particular interest in a specific item on this agenda should make plans for in-person versus virtual attendance accordingly. The meeting will be held in person in the main meeting room of Deerfield Municipal Offices. In accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, anyone intending to record the meeting must identify themselves to the clerk and provide their name and address for the record. Call the meeting to order. And this is not a typical, this was originally scheduled as a joint Finance Committee Select Board meeting, but turned out that the Finance Committee didn't need to be in participation tonight. And so we don't have any minutes from the previous meeting?
Do not.
Right. So we're going to move on to the section of the agenda that's reviewing the budget. And the only budget item that we're going to be reviewing tonight is the Board of Health budget. Is that correct, Christopher?
Correct. And I would actually just check and see if, Carolyn, are you here for an item unanticipated or?
Yes, I am here for.
So I might recommend we move to items unanticipated within 48 hours.
Okay. Because, well, you've got a lot of paperwork there. All right. So briefly, we received a request from a group of citizens throughout the state that are organizing to oppose a reopening of efforts to put pipelines, gas pipelines through New England. And so should I read this?
Yeah, probably.
So this is a letter that's suggested to go to the 9 governors of the following states: Connecticut, Maine, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, and Vermont. Dear governors, 13 years ago, people in Western Catskills of New York State were determined to stop the Constitution Pipeline through legal and political means. They were joined a few years later by people across New York State, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts who were equally resolved to prevent the Northeast Energy Direct Pipeline from ravaging their backyards, watersheds, and farmlands. Organizations, citizens groups, and local and state governments united, decrying the environmental destruction and the use of eminent domain for private gain. They succeeded in stopping the Constitution Pipeline, NED, and the Northeast Supply Enhancement Project. A few years later, the people in New Jersey and Pennsylvania stopped Penn East. We will not let them come back. On February 14, 2025, after signing an executive order establishing the National Energy Dominance Council, President Trump called for building a pipeline that had been blocked by New York State. Secretary Burgum, who chairs the council, confirmed it was the Constitution Pipeline. The president claims that everyone wants this pipeline. It could be built in less than a year, and it would substantially lower energy costs in New York, New England. Secretary Wright has subsequently said there are other stalled pipelines that should be built. These false claims are a serious threat to state sovereignty, jeopardizing our natural resources, water quality, and climate goals. The undersigned organizations ask you, as the leaders of our states, to stand united with each other and with us to protect our hard-fought victories against the expansion of fossil fuel infrastructure and to focus on fulfilling our climate goals. We know that if one pipeline gets built, more will be proposed or revived. For example, the Constitution Pipeline would end in Wright, New York, but the existing pipelines at that intersection are already at capacity for most of the year. That means additional pipelines would be needed to transport Constitution gas to either New York City or New England. Therefore, given the aggressive goals of the Energy Dominance Council, people along the routes of all stalled or officially abandoned infrastructure projects must be on high alert, including those who would be impacted by NED. Building billion-dollar pipelines does not reduce costs for consumers. Ratepayers foot the bill. The Massachusetts Secretary of Environmental and of Energy and Environmental Affairs, when recently asked about new gas infrastructure, explained that gas spot market prices peak in New England for about 7 days every winter, and stated, quote, "You don't build a gigantic pipeline for 7 days a year," end quote. There is no reason to look back. Today, more people than ever are awake, engaged, and resolved to stand up against the tyranny of greed. We have real solutions, and we are implementing them. Our region is closing fossil fuel plants, increasing renewable energy generation, and continuing to ramp up energy efficiency. Massachusetts has adopted a clean peak standard to reduce reliance on fossil fuels during times of peak energy demand, and that state has also established the nation's first Office of Energy Transformation with a mission to accelerate the energy transformation with a focus on gas to electric transition, electric grid readiness, and an affordable and just transition for workers, businesses, and communities, end quote. Rhode Island is home to the first U.S. offshore wind farm. In 2023, New York ranked third among all states for total renewable power generation. That year, wind farms in Vermont accounted for about 13% of the state's total electricity net generation, while New Jersey was the nation's 12th largest producer of electricity from solar energy and ranked 7th in small-scale solar power generation. Solar energy now accounts for approximately 1/4 of Massachusetts' in-state electricity net generation. As for energy efficiency, Rhode Island residents consume the least energy per capita in all 50 states. On a per capita basis, 8 of the 17 least energy-intensive states are in the Northeast, including all New England states, New York, and New Jersey. In 2022, New York used less energy to produce $1 of GDP than any other state. Massachusetts and Connecticut also rank among the top 5 states on this metric. New Hampshire reported a 37% reduction in energy-related carbon dioxide emissions between 2005 and 2017, and a simultaneous 15% increase in GDP. Northeastern states have clean energy transition goals and mandates to be proud of. Our stance against the build-out of gas infrastructure, after all we've achieved, is non-negotiable. Thank you to each of your administrations for your role in moving us towards a cleaner energy system that is protective of our environment and of our rights to be of self-determination as states, communities, and landowners. We cannot back down now. We are just getting started. And this letter is signed Stop the Pipeline and Pipeline Awareness Network of the Northeast, also known as SDP and Plan NE. Co-sponsors would be, I guess, any communities that want to sign on to this. I may have missed a few words there because this is a long letter.
That's good. Yeah, I got the gist.
So at this point, I just wanted to, I was in touch with some other people whose families were impacted by the first go round of the NED pipeline, and one of the farming businesses asked me to read this into the record. This is from Clarkdale Fruit Farms. Clarkdale has been growing apples, peaches, and other fruits in Deerfield since 1915. Our family farm was threatened by the proposed Kinder Morgan gas pipeline in 2015. We would have lost acres of productive orchards, and our farm's viability would have been threatened. On a town-wide scale, miles of forest and fields would have been ripped up, and our river would have been bored under. Due to the dangers of blowouts in any high-pressure pipeline, as well as the aforementioned destruction of natural resources, our family is against any pipeline being built in the region. And that's Ben Clark.
Okay.
So just want to open it up for discussion. Select board
Any
members.
comments? Did
Yes.
you want to make a comment?
I'm Carolyn Ness. I was on the Select Board and Board of Health at the time. We were the lead community fighting this. This is a documentation that the Northeast Direct Pipeline was a threat to the health and well-being of the residents of Deerfield. It's farmland, the best in the world, specifically the Yazwinski, Clarkdale, and Antonellis farms. The water quality issues were unbelievable. There was going to be a huge disruption on the Deerfield River, as well as several wetlands. And it definitely was accelerating climate change. So after a lot of research and degrading our backyards and farmland, it was determined that a large percentage of the gas going through the pipeline wasn't even for us. It was for export, for profit of the gas companies. And that as ratepayers, I mean, I personally didn't have any gas, but based on our research with ratepayers, there would never be a price decrease. They actually would have an increase because they were going to pay for the installation, the cost of the installation, whatever the Kinder Morgan was going to pay to install the pipe, plus an 8 to 11% net profit of, given to the company by DPU to Kinder Morgan was going to be transferred to the ratepayers. So there was never going to be any cost savings. Yes, maybe a couple more people could hook up to it or whatever, but the whole moratorium was pretty much of a hoax anyway. But it was a shell game. Ratepayers would definitely pay more, and it was a cost plus, and we have that documentation. There was no net benefit to the residents in the town of Deerfield for supporting this old technology. This was 20th century technology. Our future is really to continue investing in renewable energy generation and energy efficiency. There's no reason to build a pipeline. And I would encourage the Select Board, Board of Health to sign off on this letter and even resurrect the municipal group that we had. We had 13 communities to start with. We ended up with 28 in Massachusetts that used our court case cease and desist order as a basis for them having a cease and desist order. And also in New Hampshire, we had a coalition of, I'm trying to remember, it was either 23 or 26 towns. I don't know, maybe Trevor, you can remember, but
I think it's close to that, yeah.
yeah, it was quite a few towns in New Hampshire. We had a lot of meetings up there and a lot of town hall meetings. But I just wanted to let you know that absolutely this is something that we need to support stopping.
Yep.
Thank you.
I agree with
That's
that.
all I have to say. If any documentation is needed, I certainly have it.
Yeah, thank you for hanging on to it. Smart not to let it go. I'd make a motion to approve the sign on to this letter. I agree with all the statements to it, and we have to be vigilant. I think last time town meeting voted $10,000 towards funding the lawsuit, and I think Montague was the lead in litigation, and we were going to help fund that. We approved
Well,
that at
we
town
actually
meeting.
were the lead initially. We had pro bono help, but this was for the fight after.
Correct.
After they stopped.
Yeah.
It was a continuing thing. It was
Right.
to make sure that they had no permits that they could hold on to and stuff
Right.
like that.
And then that went away. I don't think we ever funded that because I think they dropped the case, correct?
Yes, they ended up dropping the case, but we
Right.
had voted at town meeting 10,000.
Right.
And there was, I think it was 5,000, it was 10 years ago.
Yeah, it was a while ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I think 5,000, we ended up transferring 5,000, but I don't think the full 10 was ever spent.
I was speaking to Bud Driver the other day, who was a big part of this as well, and he was saying that keep an eye out because it's coming back, and so definitely need to he offered his help if anybody else needs him to get involved as well.
Okay, Trevor, I'll second it.
Thank you. Sorry, that was long.
And I was in contact with Katie Eisman, who's based in Cummington, but she was also actively involved in Stop the Pipeline. And I reached out to various members of the community that I knew were involved in this. And I think I support it too. So
Yeah. All those in favor?
any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Trevor McDaniel, aye.
Blake Gilmore, aye.
Tim Elchie, aye. So the Select Board will be one of the co-signers of this letter. And I will communicate through Christopher Dunn with Katie Eisman. I signed on to this as a personal individual, but I wanted to make sure that the Select Board had a chance to weigh the pros and cons of doing it. And so thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a nice night.
Thank
Good night.
you. Good night.
Okay. So now we'll go back to the review of budget.
Right.
I see Ned Savisky is here, and we have the Board of Health payroll in front of us. And Christopher, can you talk to us a little bit about the various things that are at play here?
Sure. So this question came up a couple weeks ago when Ned was presenting the Board of Health budget, the Finance Committee, and the Select Board. We have a line item for a public health nurse who Cindy Majewski, of course, had been filling that position. She's been out for a bit. We have Ann Master-Totero filling in for her. Previously in FY25, that position had been budgeted at 12 hours a week. There was a little bit, it sounds like at some point there was a little bit of a miscommunication. And
Yeah.
so Cindy was working some additional hours. And she has certainly built up a clientele, among not only Deerfield residents, but other residents in surrounding communities based off of those hours. And so I think what we determined at the last joint select board finance committee meeting where this was discussed was the Board of Health just wanted an opportunity to speak with Ned about it and get a better grip on the numbers here, and also come to some kind of firmer understanding of where we want to be with public health nurse hours for the town of Deerfield. So I asked Ned to be here tonight to speak to it, but
Ned?
that's basically the context. And Ned, I don't know if you have anything to add to what I just mentioned there.
No, not really. I think I haven't really worked directly with Cindy a lot, so I haven't seen what she does, but
Yeah.
the sounds of her job description, there's quite a bit on there. I mean, one thing I know didn't happen last year was the flu vaccine at Deerfield Town Hall. I'm not sure if any other vaccine clinics were done outside of the senior center. So
No, I think the FERCog.
that was one thing that Val relayed to me, that she was FERCog never came over to do it.
Right.
Greenfield didn't, but that was one thing Val was a little upset about when I talked to her. And I mean, Cindy to me seems like she's worth the investment. She's got a lot of home visits that she does, and she made it clear to me that sometimes she does it on her own time, which I don't think should be happening, especially if there's some kind of an accident or something. But yeah, again, I haven't worked with her directly enough to really lay everything out, what she does and exactly why she needs the increase. But I believe in her, and I believe she's a good asset for Deerfield, and we could use her 18 hours.
Yeah, so
That's pretty much all I have. But
excellent. That's the question really in my mind is, what is the appropriate level of hours per week? And it sort of happened in an arbitrary fashion that Cindy thought she had a contract for X, but it really wasn't what she thought. And so she was working 18 hours a week, and that was not a number that was ever approved by anyone. That's my understanding. Correct me if I'm wrong.
So I guess where I'd go with this whole conversation is that it's been extremely confusing couple of years since we left FERCog and had FERCog's nurse. And all of that time was through COVID. So we had help with contact tracing, and we had grants for this and grants for that, and some money coming from this program and some money coming from that program, and then some money from, our nursing program. And I think it got confusing on her part, kind of how much she was supposed to be doing. And she had a few different people, and we had transitions and people here kind of telling her what to do as well. So between elections and different people moving jobs and whatever. So I think it was an understandable confusion on her part. And I still am a bit confused on our whole public health plan going forward. And I'd like to take this, this time and maybe through the year to kind of really evaluate what we want to do going forward as far as public nursing goes. And are we getting enough out of these public excellence grants and the Nacho grants? I mean, they do help, with Cindy out, we're taking advantage of some of the grants to help backfill her. So that's important. And I know it was great to get funding anyways from the other communities, but I can't say how much I think she is vital to the seniors and the well-being of the seniors in town, and not just seniors, but anybody. She holds office hours here. She does stuff at the senior center as well. There is a discussion on a valid point, if she's working at the senior center, she's addressing needs of 3 towns, although we're the only one funding it because they have their own nurse as well, Whately, Sunderland, but I can't, I just think she's vital at what she does. She reaches out to the seniors that are homebound, and she is constantly thinking about the needs. And then if we have a crisis that crops up, she's vital. She maintains lists of our homebound seniors, and then she holds office hours here. So I am in full support of the 18 hours, but then we just have to kind of communicate that she needs to stay within that. And then the 18 hours also encompasses the NACHO grant. So there's several hours, 2.5 or 3 hours a week that she needs to do the NACHO grant work. So that is included in the 18 hours. So there's maybe 15 hours that she does Deerfield stuff. 3 hours of the week she's maintaining lists or whatever that requirements are from that NACHO grant. But I would like to, and then support this for sure, and then think about going forward. Is this the best model going forward? Are these the right hours? Maybe take some periodic evaluation. I'm bummed she can't be here to talk because she's out for a reason, and but would love to kind of talk with her when she's back. To get check-ins on how many people she's touching base with. Does she feel like she needs less hours, more hours? What is she doing? What she needs for supplies? I think she is spending supplies. She'll get hand sanitizer, pill boxes, different things like that. But I think, again, I even think she's taking money out of her own pocket to do some of that stuff. She's just got such a big heart and sees the need. But if there is truly a need, we want to compensate for that. I think she's using all of that, but she might not have understood fully budgeting. And so I guess it's incumbent upon us to just make sure like she stays within certain budgets, amounts, and hours. So I fully support the 18 hours, and
Well,
I'll go from there.
yeah, I do. Ned, do you have a budget within the Board of Health budget that has discretionary supplies? I mean, is there a line item that addresses that?
There is a line item that addresses supplies.
$500.
So probably a limited number of purchases could be made for whatever is available.
Yeah,
And if I heard Trevor correctly, some of this used to be paid for by NACHO grant. Do we know the status of the NACHO grant and how much money is left? And because it looks like a negative 5,000 in this. I don't know.
Right, that's right. That's how much kind of gets funded by the grant, I think, per year. And I don't know how many years that goes for.
I'm not certain off the top of my head, but I can pull that up.
That'd be great.
Yeah, I'm
And then
just want to explore that because I'm going to do a little math here.
The
So
excellence grant too is.
yeah, I don't know the balance of the NACHO grant,
yeah,
going forward.
so my thinking is that a logical number for the money that we are expending as a town for a town nurse is 15 hours a week and 3 hours applied to the NACHO grant. I think if there's a $5,000 amount here, that's like 114 hours a year that could be paid for. This is just my back of the napkin math, but I do agree with Trevor that this is one of the areas where we can help seniors who have difficulty making ends meet on Social Security, and they've got tax bills, and they've got all these other expenses that you incur as you age. And, you know, I think it's a valuable service. Most of her clients are elderly, and many of them are housebound. And it's incumbent on a community to take care of its citizens. So I have no issue with the expense. I just, I want to make clear that there's a 15-hour and then there's a 3-hour per week.
For a total of 18.
Yeah, for a total of
Yeah.
So I don't know if that means that, yeah, when I do the math on this, I don't know if the 940 stays the same, but we have funding sources that are different, and part of the 41,000 that we're talking about is made up by 5,000 from NACHO, or if we did 15 hours a week that we were actually paying for at the rate that we suggest, that's like a little less than 35,000 a year. So it's, I guess, is that how it works out, Christopher, that this 41,000 is funded by both town money and the NACHO grant?
Correct, yeah. So what you're seeing on that payroll budget there, that 5,000 that's being subtracted in 2026 is the NACHO grant, and that's coming from that public health nurse line item.
And from what I understand, the excellence grant really just covers if Ned's out for some reason, illness or whatever, there's a backup. Or I think maybe when Cindy is out, maybe is that the excellence grant is covering that payroll, but it doesn't cover any other supplies or anything. And then the only supply for the whole Board of Health is $500 for the year. There's some gas, mileage, that kind of thing, the tick testing, mosquito control, some meetings, conferences, postage, but that's
Well, the Public Health Excellence Grant does provide a lot of different types of supplies. And in fact, when I attend these Valley Health Regional Collaborative meetings, we talk about what supplies are available. Ned recently got supplies through that group that were aimed at women, I believe, sanitary issues and
Okay.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
it's good to know.
And
'cause
also
we were-
COVID tests.
yeah,
But you're correct in that there are public nurses that have been hired to service the towns in the Valley Health Regional Collaborative, but they're not dedicated to us.
correct.
But Ann Muster-Totaro is
Right.
filling 5 hours a week or
Yes.
some number because of Cindy's absence. So hopefully some of those issues about buying supplies out of your own pocket like school teachers do,
Yeah.
this has been a small amount of what's going on. But I don't think that the public health nurses provide the same service that Cindy provides for our residents.
Right. Right. Okay, that's great.
So-
It's great to hear that there is some supplies coming. I
Yeah.
wasn't
So,
aware.
I think, again, I echo the same thing, that we should stay with what we have here for the budget, but that an evaluation should be done by you, Ned.
Okay.
You're not getting us that well, but that maybe you should sit down with her when she gets back and come up with what her needs are, and then when she comes before the board, we can better evaluate what the needs are, whether it's time issues or whether it's supplies and that sort of thing. And then again, because of Tim's availability with the health department stuff and for the county, that maybe we can pick up some of those supplies from there that she may not be aware of. But at the same time, if we need to increase certain things the next time out, we'll have an idea of what
Yeah.
she's doing
Right.
and what needs to be corrected.
Yep.
So, and again, I think, like I said, you should be sitting down with her, maybe even on a regular
Yeah.
basis, and just go through what her needs are and what she's missing out on.
Yeah, I'd like to have a better grip on it too. To be honest, I don't want it to be where she does her thing and I do my thing and neither one of us really knows what the other's doing.
Right.
'Cause,
Teamwork's always better.
Yeah, I've worked with several public health nurses and some of this stuff, does not look or sound familiar to me on the job description. So I'm gonna just see if, she's even working on some of that or.
Right.
And know that, again, I think that meeting with us once in a while to come up with those needs as we go through the year, it'll be something that we're aware of, so we're up to speed on it as well. We're not getting it,
Okay,
actually now. We don't really know
We
what
can-
the needs are.
And we can advocate, I know what she does
Right.
offhand, but it would be great to just know what her true needs are, what she's seeing in the community when she talks to these seniors, and what we can advocate for, and in a variety of different ways that we meet with other people. And if we find that we need to cut back on hours because she isn't really doing enough, then we find that out too. But I think that there is quite a bit of a need out there for the seniors. So
I know she's been
Yeah.
invaluable in identifying people who transition from one stage of life to another, where they
absolutely.
become more dependent on police and EMS. And so she's kept a good log of, the residents that she works with. So, yeah.
Mhm.
Great personality for it.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
fabulous. There's no
wonderful.
question about that. So we can continue this. I'm going to make a motion to approve Board of Health payroll for account 512-5110 in the amount of $114,868.
Second.
Okay, so one thing I wanted to check on, I know that there was, Ned brought up that our animal inspector
Right.
is about to retire or has ceased doing those duties, and that there is a $2,000 stipend in another budget.
Yeah.
Correct. It's the budget right after this one.
Yeah.
So there's a $2,000 stipend in there. And Brenda has mentioned that if, our health agent, in this case Ned, does continue to take on those responsibilities, that $2,000 budget should be plugged into his salary.
Right.
So-
We should move it over to this
Correct.
budget.
Yep.
Right. And I'm feeling like we should do that as well. And you were going to do a little bit of a research on kind of what was needed. I think it kind of evaluate that job a little bit and see what was being done and what you think might need to happen. And is the stipend enough or accurate, or are there supplies that should go along with it, that kind of thing?
Yeah, there's not a lot of supplies really other than a good pair of boots, but
Yep.
at least from my last experience of doing this. But I'm just my thought right now is how am I going to find out where all these farms are, these backyard chicken coops? Where, as I talked to Dick about it, he only did the commercial farms.
Okay.
But what they're looking for is residential, just anyone with backyard chickens, just to keep a good count on them.
Yeah.
And the books come out in the fall, and I'll probably get that in September, October, and that you can do them anytime after that, before the end of the year. So I welcome any suggestions on how to reach out to the community.
Yeah.
And have them notify us. I don't know how well that will go over in Deerfield. You guys probably have a better idea than I do, but
Doesn't the clerk send something out every year about the dog licensing and stuff like that? Could she put a notice in there for that? Because with the chickens, people just go out and buy them.
Right.
There's no regulation as far as how many you can have, or if you buy them, you have to register them or anything like that. So I mean,
right.
basically, I just think a notice going out would, you get some people. I don't know if you get everybody, but at least that's a start for you.
And it's not like
Sure.
charging them or anything like
Right.
that, correct? I mean, this is just, it's
No, there's no charge.
make sure people are healthy and, with the bird flu going on and that kind of thing, that you're
Mhm.
just making sure that
And
whatever they're doing.
Yeah, it's
is-
to monitor the flocks and
Yeah,
whatever other animal, I mean, it's not only chickens. I mean,
right.
people raise ducks, they raise geese, they raise, you know,
Yeah, sheep, any kind of farm animal.
right. So,
Alpacas.
it sounds like what we need to do is let Ned, figure out what sort of task this is. And the logical path would be for this FY26, keep it as a stipend and then evaluate whether it needs to be rolled into the health inspector job. I will say that it's very difficult to find health inspectors who have the broad spectrum of skills that Ned has.
Right.
And we hope he's here for a long time, but
Well-
when we start adding in new jobs to the main person, we run the risk of not being able to find people who are qualified to do all these things, and sometimes the stipend makes more sense, but
So
Yeah, there was also a request from the animal officer in Whately, to see if we needed somebody. So in the back of my mind, I have her if it doesn't work out this year. I mean, I have no problem doing it. I don't want you to think that, but if it turns out where I'm overwhelmed or too busy at the moment, maybe next year that would be something to consider.
I think that would be your thing, is to evaluate the needs for doing this, and then come back and
Mhm.
let us know what you think you need to, what we need to do going forward.
Okay.
It's fine. I just want to make sure it's not smart to move this over to this payroll since he will be getting it. I just want to make sure that it's compensated towards his retirement if he's doing the work.
right, I mean,
I don't know if that can be done
I
here or
think,
there.
yeah, no, I don't have a problem with moving the
Yeah.
stipend from one
Right.
budget to another. I'm just saying that for 1 year, I think it's prudent to find out whether he feels
Correct.
that this stipend at this amount is,
I agree.
and whether it's a job that's more appropriate to somebody who just deals with farm animals.
Yep.
And we bring them in on a stipend and they do all that work and
Correct.
they're familiar with the reporting.
Yep.
So, what do you think, Blake?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Does it make any sense to move the stipend from one budget to another?
I mean, I think we could talk to Brenda about it.
Okay.
To Trevor's point, it's really just about ensuring that if he is carrying out those duties, it's counted towards his pension.
Yeah,
Well,
that-
wouldn't
that's
that be
really-
part of this evaluation
And that's
for the
what-
next year? So the next year, we actually, if we need to, then we push it over.
The only
to his
reason,
salary
the
then.
only reason I say it is that this is kind of a directive from Brenda when I talked
Right.
to her about it today, that we should move it. If he's going to do the work, we should move it. And then whether somebody else does it next year, it can still be in that same payroll.
Yeah, I have no problem moving the stipend
Are
to
you
this,
gonna, are
this
you gonna
payroll.
keep it as a separate item? in the
Yes,
payroll? Yeah,
exactly.
that's
Not
fine.
just
That's
add
just-
to his,
yeah,
but
that's
just
fine.
as a separate animal inspection
I agree
thing.
with that.
And that it would be pensionable
Yeah,
under his salary, so.
so what do we need to do to
So-
accomplish that goal?
I think we can wait until we actually have the finance committee here and move it then.
Yeah,
Okay.
that sounds good. That sounds good. We
sounds
can
like a
talk
plan.
about it then.
All right.
That's great.
But in principle, we have consensus about the 18 hours,
Yes,
Yes.
3 hours being covered by Nicho.
Yep.
yes.
And I think we agree on Ned's class and step. So, okay, we can bring this up
Yeah.
at the next joint
Yep,
finance
and do
select
it
board
together.
meeting.
That makes sense.
All right. Anything else on that front, Christopher?
No, not at the moment. Ned, appreciate you taking the time
Yeah,
to
thank you,
zoom
Ned.
in tonight.
Okay, yeah, I apologize. I had it down for 6 o'clock and
Oh, no worries.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no,
No
that's
worries at
totally
all.
fine. We had an unanticipated item to deal with anyway, so
Yeah.
it was no
Good.
trouble at all.
Thanks, Ned.
Thank you, Ned.
Okay, thank you guys. Have a good night.
Good night.
You too.
Okay, so
For the,
do you want to go over to the warrant?
Yes, yeah. So, according to our town bylaws, chapter 48, section 3, if you want to take a look at it, we are supposed to close the annual town meeting warrant 30 days prior to the annual town meeting, which is April 28th this year. So we've actually really got until Monday to close it, but given that we're meeting today, we figured
Yeah.
we'd do it.
Makes sense.
So you should all have a copy of it in front of you. I'm gonna just maybe pull it up on the screen here as well. The first couple articles there are should be pretty familiar. Article 1, A through G. We do those every year, and it's pretty standard.
This- This year, the assessor's numbers have changed, correct?
So right. So at this point, and just for purposes of clarification, so when we close the warrant, we are closing the ability to add additional articles. Those articles themselves that are existing may be tweaked somewhat, and that
Gotcha.
includes dollar figures.
Yep. Okay, good. I'm good with that.
So yeah, so as I was saying, Article 1, A through G, town report, acceptance of the town report, compensation for elected officials, acknowledgement of gifts, which, covers any of the nonprofits and their monetary gifts, and then also includes an acknowledgement of their numerous non-monetary gifts. We cover the library interest, and then we have acceptance of grants, which the select board needs to do annually. And then, or rather, town meeting needs to do annually, and then select board contracting authority and assessor contracting authority. So those are the sort of pro forma articles that we do every year. And then Article 2, A through C, is all free cash transfers. So we have a $100,000 reserve fund that is funded through a free cash transfer. OPEB liability trust fund, I believe Brenda has plugged in the current number for this year as well.
I'd like to just ask her how much is in there at the moment. Just, after we put this in.
Yeah,
so
sure.
what we're sitting at, just
Very
curious. I know it's woefully inadequate. but
Nowhere
just-
close. Yep.
Just helpful to know what it
Yeah,
is. Yep.
absolutely. And then, the last item on there is out of district placement for vocational education. And so that's generally a number we know with better certainty by April. So we'll hear from Smith Vocational. And I believe the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education sets their rates in April as well. So then we're usually able to,
Yeah.
if we have a student, we know what the rate is for that student as well.
I think Brenda was carrying some money currently, either one or two students, just to have a
Just
cushion.
to have it. Yep, exactly.
Okay.
But we'll be able to refine those figures in April.
Yep, sounds good.
And then Article 3, again, just one we do every year. We have a few revolving funds, and Mass General Law requires us just to, every year, just state what those funds are and what the spending limit on those is as well. So we have recycling, Parks and Rec, and planning.
Okay.
Article 4 is, the annual article to cover shortfall in the snow and ice budget. This year, it's definitely going to be a shortfall. I
Yeah.
think Brenda was mentioning something like 70 to
That's what I was wondering,
75,000.
about 75K. Okay.
And this is one of those budget items that, you never decrease it.
Correct.
And you also never increase it so much that you actually capture everything. So it's just, that's why we have this article.
Yep.
And then Article 5 was a request from the Finance Committee to allow us to top up the capital stabilization fund. That we're obviously still in the process of developing that capital improvement plan.
Yep.
And so this is sort of, once we figure that out, we'll have an article and a dollar figure that we can plug in here to, bring the capital stabilization fund, which is at around 100,000 currently, up just a bit, and make sure we're, providing for future capital needs with that. And then Article 6 and 7 are both, Article, let me see what I'm looking at here.
6 is the omnibus budget.
Yeah, excuse
Yep.
me. I just lost my place here. Yep. So Article 6 is the omnibus budget, of course.
Yep.
Big one, but we don't need to belabor it talking about it here. And then Article 7 is the sewer enterprise fund. Article 8 is also the SCEMS enterprise fund.
Yep.
And then at 9, we have that capital improvement plan.
Mhm.
We can return to that in a moment. And then that capital improvement plan in Article 9 is actually for FY25, so for the current year. And then there's a second article for FY26. And And I believe the logic there was we had some capital requests having to do with sewer that we realized really are best funded through the current year retained earnings. So,
Yep.
so that will cover that. Article 11 is the community preservation. And we'll have, what you have in front of you here is just balances in each of those reserves as of June 30th, 2024. So don't get too attached to those numbers. They're wildly out of date.
Yes. Yes.
And then, beyond that, those are sort of all the standard articles we generally do. And then we get into some of the more specific ones. So Article 12 is the start of 3 articles that have to do with the Stillwater Bridge project. Article 12 is the authorization to the legislature, or rather for the select board to petition the legislature to file special legislation that would allow us to essentially take easements from Article 97 land. So again, this is Article 97 land, so it's got to be used for open space or recreation purposes, and only an act of the legislature can change that. This is literally, the bottom of the river where these bridge footings will need to go, and so not highly valued, but still have to go through the process nonetheless.
Yep.
So that is the special legislation. That's a couple pages there. And then Article 13 is the granting of easements. So there are about 7 property owners who are affected by the easements. Now that we've had appraisals and we have just compensation numbers, we're looking at probably a total of around $2,500 for all those easements. So it gives you a sense of just how small those easements are.
Afraid it was bigger.
And then
Will
Article
that-
14, oh, sorry.
Funded out of like a free cash or?
Yeah, so we were talking about that. It can be Chapter 90. So that's what
Okay.
we did for the survey and the
Okay.
appraisal.
It doesn't need a separate article for cash.
Right,
Okay.
right.
All right.
And then Article 14 is the change of land use for the land that we are giving as mitigation for that Article 97 land. So this parcel that the town owns off of Mill Village Road that's also along the river would be placed under a conservation restriction for DCR, basically. So they hold the current conservation restriction for the Article 97 land under Stillwater Bridge. So it's just a like for like.
Yep.
And that's it for Stillwater. And then Article 15 is FERCog's charter update.
Right.
So they're just petitioning every town this year to put this on their warrant and get it passed.
Yep.
Minor updates to their charter, just modernizing it slightly. It's a document created in the late 1990s. And then Article 16 is the prudent investment rule. So you've seen a lot of towns take advantage of this opportunity in the last few years. Essentially, currently, any investments that we make are limited to a very small list of about 10 funds. And what they changed recently was just the ability of towns to go off that list, essentially. And so we can, essentially, if it's a prudent investment, so it's relatively conservative, that gives the power, Sarah the power, say, to invest in some funds beyond that list of 10.
Yeah,
So,
that makes sense.
and we'll have, from our attorneys, we'll have a nice detailed explanation because it could easily get lost on folks at town meetings. So it's,
Sure.
yeah.
I don't know if Bartholomew will have any advice of like sample funds that they could.
That's a great thought. Yeah, I'll reach out to Bartholomew. Yeah.
They might have some ideas, just to let people know that we're not going to be like going for Bitcoin.
And just
Meme coins.
just to assuage anybody's fears, is there any, is this in the sole purview of the treasurer, or
Yes.
is it in consultation with the town administrator and the accountant? Or, I mean, obviously, those kind of discussions would probably go on
Right.
in any case, but
Right. Yeah. And we could certainly set a policy around it if we were worried. I'm not too worried about
I'm not
Sarah,
worried.
but
No, I'm not at all worried
she's
about.
she's pretty
You know?
prudent.
Going forward,
But I've read a lot of newspaper articles.
Yeah. No, but it definitely a good thought. And I will also reach out to
I'm
Bartholomew
anticipating
on that one.
what might come up at the meeting.
Yep. The next one, Article 17, is to change from an elected town constable to an appointed town constable. This is one that we'd vote on it this year, but it really wouldn't be on the ballot until next year. So plenty of time to think about it in the interim.
Reason? Or thinking it might be easier to find somebody, or sometimes. I don't know,
Yeah, so I believe Cassie, I mean, first of all, this is just kind of the direction a lot of communities are going. There used to be a lot more elected positions, and of course, you still see some
Correct.
that are elected that probably should be appointed.
Right.
And this is one of them. I think that's a lot of towns are making this transition. So we'll certainly have Cassie available to speak to it and
Okay.
get a written explanation as well for some of the deeper reasoning she had there.
Great.
And, you know, it would also, if it were to pass, you know, it would be sort of appropriate that Sharon Pachorik would be the last constable elected before the change.
Yes,
You know, just sort of a bookend on
she's
a long tradition.
amazing, amazing service to the town.
Absolutely. Article 18, this is a recently added one, and Sarah just forwarded me some details on this today, so happy to kind of pull that up and talk through it a little bit. But essentially, back a couple of years ago when the Supreme Court had this decision about towns not being able to profit essentially off of taking for back taxes.
Yep.
Massachusetts went through a whole kind of tax title reform process, and one of the reforms that came out of that was kind of codifying payment plans for folks who do have back taxes.
I see.
So
Makes sense.
initially, in conversations with Sarah, wasn't certain that this is something we needed to move on immediately. She had heard from our tax title attorney that it was something we should look at. Spoke with Lisa in the last week, and she said, "Oh, yeah, you should definitely do this." So,
At least
so
it's laid out. Everybody understands if you're in tax title, you know, there is a process. It's
Right.
not- It's all laid out well ahead of time.
right, and it
Everybody
creates some
understands.
it creates some parameters around time frame, interest, et cetera. So,
Right. No, I'm in favor of that for sure. Okay.
and then that is the last of the select board's articles, so to speak. And then beyond that, we have 4 citizen petitions. 3 of them are related and have to do with decarbonization initiatives in the town of Deerfield. So Article 19 is a specialized energy code bylaw. So this is the so-called stretch energy code. Article 20 is the zero emission first vehicle policy. And Article 21 is just a resolution about decarbonization by 2050. And then Article 22 is a familiar one. This is a question on voting rights for those 16 and older, and this is really about petitioning. It's a request for the select board to petition the select board, or excuse me, to the legislature. Yeah,
Yep.
you can petition yourselves if you want, but
So, right, it doesn't really enact anything. It just kind of
Correct.
puts on the list with several other communities that are looking to maybe move
Correct.
this item forward eventually someday.
right, exactly.
Okay.
And that is the whole of it.
And the
So-
logic, I think, of Article 19 being first is that if the first one doesn't pass, then we don't have to consider the second and third. Most likely it would be withdrawn.
Right. So those 3 articles, part of the reason they're tied together is it has to do with designating Deerfield as a climate leader community. And this is sort of a Green Communities 2.0 thing. So it's sort of the next step for communities that are taking even stronger steps towards addressing climate change and energy efficiency. And so if Article 19 doesn't pass, and it is by far the most, controversial or worthy of discussion, then there's not really much point going into 20 or 21 at that point. So we would pass over those.
Okay. All right.
So, is there any discussion? Well, for discussion, I guess, well, let's get a consensus. Anybody object to closing the warrant?
No.
All right.
No,
All right.
there was something Mark had said that he was going to ask for something. Did he talk to anybody? Mark Brennan? He said, "Oh, it's closing." At the last meeting, he said, "Oh, it's closing. I wanted to talk to you," but he never did. So,
I think it was all the capital improvement.
Yeah.
oh, maybe some doing some.
Julie is appearing
Oh,
on
we could
screen.
have-
So
Hey,
Julie, what do you
Do you know
remember?
what Mark was talking about?
He did have something, but we talked back and forth about it, and he's not going to do it this year.
Okay, maybe take the year to plan it and stuff.
Mhm.
Oh, I think, yes, he did call me and discuss that a bit about kind of updating our bylaw around the capital planning bylaw, correct? I think he was working on, I know we worked on that several years ago, changed some bylaw, some timing, that kind of thing, and I think he was trying to strengthen that a little bit or get some more clarity about that. So it makes sense to.
In that case, I don't know. It was something
Oh,
else. He
maybe-
was talking about establishing another stabilization fund to do with SCEMS, but it's not ready to even be talked about yet.
I see. Okay, no, that is different than what I had talked to him about earlier in the year.
All
Okay.
right, so take a motion to close the warrant.
I'll make that motion, close the warrant.
Second,
All those in favor?
Trevor McDaniel, aye.
Blake Gilmore, aye.
Tim Hilchi, aye. All right. Is that it? Christopher, can we go home?
I think we can go home.
Let's see, I just wanted to, can we real quickly, just
Sure.
while we're here, take a quick, real fast discussion of the capital items? I know we'll talk about this a little bit more, with the capital.
I didn't
committee.
bring my book, so you're gonna.
That's okay,
see if
I can whip this out pretty quick. It was just a fast, I mean, there was not a lot on the list this year. I mean, there's a lot, but we don't have money for a lot, so, really, the items that would maybe come out of free cash, were the DES flooring and the, circulatory pumps for heating. And then, and possibly the truck number 12, which we don't have an answer from Matt yet on whether that's crucially needed now or
Is
could
that
wait
the-
until the fall.
Is that the 77,000 one?
Yes, yeah, it was the plow truck, sander truck that was kind of rotted, had a bent frame, Hap's old truck. So, and again, we could tackle this stuff in the fall too. So if there's something we want to wait till free cash is certified and have a, fall town meeting, we can do that. But just my 2 cents on this is that I think it's important to fund the DES circulatory pumps. At least it's a 2-year plan, so it should be 18,000 for both years. And I think they were just going to get started with the one pump, or one setup for one. So that would be my recommendation, and then to hold on the flooring for a year so that maybe we can put some money into capital stabilization and then see what free cash is and maybe tackle it in the fall. I don't think it would make a real difference either way. And then we already talked about moving the sewer projects, which was a generator at the Captain Lathrop and a water supply down to the plant in Old Deerfield. We're just going to do that as capital out of retained earnings from there. So that's not anything we need to deal with. Was there anything else that were?
Well, there was a discussion, if we held off on the flooring, I asked the question, should we do both pumps at the same time? Because you'll have a contractor there to do it. And so I
I'll
don't
get an
know who,
answer on that.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but I have no objection to doing one or both.
Yeah.
I think that we should get something back from the school.
Yeah, I'll
saying-
talk to
Because the
Bill.
other part of this is that if you buy 2 of them instead of one, you
Might
may
be a
get a
better
deal
deal.
on the 2 of them
I'll
instead
find
of
out.
buying one this year and one next year.
I talked to Darius today and I told him that kind of, he's away on vacation, but was asking a bit about how the meeting went on Monday, and we were talking about capital stuff. And I said, I reiterated his, notion to me that the floors could wait, but the pump was important. But I didn't ask about doing both, so I can get an answer from him or from Bill,
Yeah, Bill
Hildreth.
Hildreth.
whether that makes sense or not. But, and then everything else, I think we're pretty good on, except for that truck 12. And then the loader, I guess we're still waiting another year on.
And if we're gonna buy the truck out of free cash, because we don't have a appropriate amount in capital stabilization, or there
Right.
isn't in the DPW, we could approve that at the special town meeting
We could in
in
the
the
fall.
fall. So,
Yes, exactly.
I mean, I don't
Either way,
have a
I'm
problem either way, but
Same here.
we can do it in the context of the joint finance
Mm-hmm.
committee meeting. This, yeah,
Okay, great. That's great. That's all I got. Anybody else?
That's all I got
all right.
right now.
Take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
All those in favor?
Trevor McDaniel, aye.
Blake Gilmore, aye.
Tim Hilchi, aye.
Great. Thank you all very much.